Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, co-author of the Parable Port series, and there's a little book that's been making a tiny resurgence in the past couple days. Resurgence? And that is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine. And I just have to say, this book is one of my favorites of all time. And there are actually sequels to this book that a lot of people don't know about. This book is a sci-fi fantasy classic from 1962, and it is so excellent. This book was actually rejected by tons of publishers until it was finally accepted by a publisher who then published it, and it became a classic. And this one has been used in schools across the world. It's been translated in tons of languages. It is an absolute incredible read. And I think if you have never read A Wrinkle in Time, you definitely should. It is all kinds of weird. Like, it has so many weird things going on in it. There's so much sci-fi. There's some fantasy elements to it. There's some apocalyptic kind of stuff to it. It's really well done. It's so well written. I can't even stress that enough. But I thought it'd be fun because there's actually a quintet of books, the Time Quintet, that A Wrinkle in Time is part of. And I thought it would be fun to rank all 5 of the Time Quintet books by Madeleine and see where they land on my list. So let's go ahead and let's rank all 5 of the Wrinkle in Time books. So coming in at number 5 is definitely my least favorite of the books, but not the worst written book. It's still pretty good. It's just my least favorite of the books. And that is book number 3, A Swiftly Tilting Planet. Now this one follows this character named Charles Wallace, who Charles Wallace is the younger brother of the main character in A Wrinkle in Time, Meg. And Charles Wallace is kind of like a child prodigy. Like, he has a lot going on in his life. Like, there's a lot going on. But he actually joins up with this unicorn in this book, and they travel through time. Now, there were parts of this book I really loved and parts of it that I got so bored with, because as they travel through time, Charles Wallace is like going into other people's like minds and psyches and kind of helping to affect what happens in the future, because there's this dictator who's trying to take over the world, and there's kind of like a nuclear thing going on here. It's a whole thing. But there are these in-between sequences when the unicorn and Charles Wallace are like traveling through time in like this other dimension kind of space where they're being attacked by these creatures, that I loved that stuff. But then I hated the stuff that was kind of like stuck in a time period. So this one is a really interesting one. I feel like other people would probably like this one more than me. It has a lot of like political kind of intrigue going on, as well as like the whole dictator thing and the nuclear stuff. Like, there's a lot going on in this book. So that's why it's number 5 on my list. And then coming in at number 4 is actually book number 5 in the Time Quintet, and that is An Acceptable Time. Now, this book is actually about Polly O'Keefe, who is Meg, the main character of Wrinkle in Time. It's her daughter. And so Meg, her daughter goes to stay at the grandparents' farm, and while she's there, she finds this like portal to the past. And so she goes through this portal and goes 3,000 years in the past and has this whole interaction with this people group there, and there's a lot of pieces going on. This one is a little more slow moving. It's a lot longer than some of the other books, like Swiftly Tilting Planet is quite a bit shorter than An Acceptable Time. But this one, I liked the exploration of the character of Polly. She was a very interesting character to follow along with, but overall the plot is a little bit slow and I didn't exactly love it. So that's why it's at number 4 on this list. Then coming in at number 3 is book number 4 in the Time Quintet, and that is Many Waters. Oh, I loved this book. Now, this book is an interesting retelling of the story of Noah's Ark from the Bible. And as a children's pastor, I am always intrigued by when things like that from the Bible come into stories and fiction and literature. So in this book, you actually have the twin brothers of Meg, Sandy and Dennis, and they go back in time or do they? It's very interesting, to the time before Noah's Ark and the flood and all that stuff happens. That is from the Bible story in the book of Genesis in the Bible. And so you have all these different characters from that story. There's like all these different things happening in this, like different creatures. There's like a woolly mammoth that's involved. It's a whole thing. And it's very, very intriguing. I loved this book. I thought it was so interesting. The way that Madeleine kind of weaves in the story of Noah into this time travel science fiction adventure. Like, it's just so fascinating to me. And so I probably like it a little bit more because of that aspect, but I really did enjoy this one quite a bit. That's why it's at number 3. So then coming in at number 2, this one might be a little shocking to some people, but it is book number 1, A Wrinkle in Time. Now, this book, like I said, is a classic. So this book is about a girl named Meg and her little brother, Charles Wallace, who their dad is missing. He has gone missing. They don't know where he is. They don't know what's happened to him until one night, Mrs. Whatsit appears. And Mrs. Whatsit helps her discover that her dad's alive and they can rescue him, but they have to travel through a wormhole to get there. And they're going to have to travel to some very scary places in order to save him. And this book is a classic, and I absolutely love it. There's so many interesting things going on in this book. You have like this situation where Mrs. Whatsit and Mrs. Who and Mrs. Which, are they angels? What are they? Madeleine kind of plays with the idea of angels in this book, also with the idea of like a hive mind. There's so many things going on, and the ending section of this book is so creepy. And I have to believe is inspired by C.S. Lewis's That Hideous Strength, because there is part of this book that really reminds me of That Hideous Strength. If you've read that book in C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy, you would know what I'm talking about. If you've also read this book, there's just some very, very creepy stuff going on in both of these, and it is really intense, but so well done. I feel like in the book, the ending of this works so well. However, there have been a couple of movie adaptations of this book, and they are both, in my opinion, not the best. Because in my opinion, they really didn't do justice to the story. There's a lot going on. Even with today's special effects, I feel like there's a lot of interesting things in this book that would be very difficult to portray. Even with the incredible CGI work that they do now, it just would not live up to this book because there's so much going on in this book. So I feel like the book in this situation is way better than any movie we've gotten so far. Maybe someday we'll get something, and that would be awesome, but I don't think we will. And so for now, I would just recommend reading this book because it is excellent. Such a wonderful, wonderful book, such a historic piece of literature. So then coming in at number 1 is none other than the second book, A Wind in the Door. I loved this book. So I had read A Wrinkle in Time. And after I read A Wrinkle in Time, I did not know there were other books until I heard about A Wind in the Door and saw it at my local library. And I thought, wait a minute, what? There's another book in this series? I want to read it now because I have to know what happens. This book takes place a lot closer in time to A Wrinkle in Time, like kind of nearly after that book. And there are so many interesting things happening in this book. It is mind-blowing, the things that go on. You have some very interesting creatures that show up in this book. You have an absolutely terrifying scene with the principal, Mr. Jenkins, of the school. That scene is like burned into my memory after reading this book. Like, I will not forget it. It is so creepy and so horrifying, but so well written. I feel like this book leans a little more into a little bit of horror than the Wrinkle in Time and the other books do, because this one is just more intense. Charles Wallace is sick in this book, and Meg is trying to find a way to save her brother's life. And so she goes on this intergalactic adventure once again to try and save him. And it just goes so interesting. So many sci-fi things that happen in this book that are fascinating. The ending of it just blew my mind. I loved it so much. I absolutely, absolutely love this book. And when you find out what A Wind in the Door means, I feel like that is so beautiful and so incredible. It just is, I have no words for it. It's amazing. So that is the entire Time Quintet by Madeleine and Wrinkle with A Wrinkle in Time. And I do recommend reading A Wrinkle in Time, especially if you're watching some shows recently where this book might have shown up. I don't know what I'm talking about, but you do, maybe. This book is so interesting, and I think it's a classic, and it just is some of the best literature that's out there. If you've never read any of these, I highly recommend the first two. These three you could leave if you don't want to, but the first two, incredible books. So until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.